Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going to war with the mainstream Democrats, challenging the Democratic elites. The first thing she did when she got to DC was she joined a protest against Nancy Pelosi, and a lot of people were like, whoa, why is the new young Democrat protesting Democrats? It's because they hate the Democrats as much as they don't like the Republicans. But I think it's also interesting when you see Cortez criticizing the Democrats, nobody calls her conservative. But here we have this story from the Daily Caller. Ocasio-Cortez endorses effort to primary members of her own party in 2020. She's going after incumbents. And I gotta say, first, I like the idea of getting the incumbents out of there. I don't like the idea of replacing them with the far left, because the far left just keeps failing, so they'll probably fail, they won't win. But I don't like the idea of the Democrats going far left. I don't like extremely far left policies. I actually wouldn't mind being a little bit to the left of some of the moderate Democrats. You know, because some of them are actually kind of conservative Democrats, more to the right than I am. But Cortez, she's got so many ridiculous gaffes. She even made a gaffe in this video. Like, she did this video telling people you have to run now, you start thinking about this now, because we need to control all three chambers of Congress. Oops, I mean, all three chambers of government. And I'm just like, oh no. There's no chambers of government. There are branches of government, and there are two chambers of Congress. Okay, but she misspoke. That one's not so bad. Her claiming that 200 million people in the U.S. live off of less than like $30,000 a year, whatever she said, is nonsense. She's just rife with gaffes. Okay, let's read the story. Democratic Socialist Congresswoman-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has endorsed a left-wing activist group's effort to primary fellow Democrats deemed to be too conservative. Long story short, I need you to run for office, Cortez told the group Justice Democrats in a Saturday video conference, according to Politico. The group has launched a campaign called Our Time. Now, I want to point out, I believe this is 100% true, that Cortez is directly affiliated with the Justice Democrats. It's not like it's her talking to an outside group. They say, you know, it makes it kind of sound that way. But her website, Ocasio2018.com, initially, when it was first launched, redirected to something called Brand New Congress, which apparently is an offshoot of Justice Democrats. So she's officially like one of these progressive Justice Dems that the Young Turks are the ones who basically put together Justice Dems. Although they're not affiliated now because Cenk was called out for being sexist. But anyway, they had a call about it. Here's a quote. All Americans know money in politics is a huge problem, but unfortunately, the way that we fix it is by demanding that our incumbents give it up or by running fierce campaigns ourselves, said the Congresswoman-elect from New York, who herself ousted long-term Democrat Joe Crowley. Now, I typically agree with getting money out of politics, but I do want to point out something really interesting that was brought up to me by a conservative. If there is no money in politics, that means only powerful institutions will have a say in who does or does not get elected. Right now, you can buy commercials to advertise your program. If you remove money from politics, what will end up happening is it's people like Bob Hugin, right? And I'm not saying Bob Hugin's a bad guy. But in the New Jersey race, you had Bob Menendez and Bob Hugin. Now, most of these politicians are millionaires, but Bob Hugin loaned his own campaign something like $26 million. If you remove money from politics, and typically what this means is like Citizens United, where people say that you shouldn't be able to spend endless money promoting, like, basically what happens is this. A private group can spend as much money as they want on whatever they want. So a super PAC, a 501c4, can spend $10 million running commercials saying, we love this candidate, vote for them, as long as they don't have direct affiliation with the candidate. Because there's financial there's election regulation, right? You can't donate a certain amount. Politicians can't accept a certain amount, certain gifts. Now, I am of the belief that we do need some kind of regulation in that regard because PACs do essentially run amok. But there is a challenge here in that if you say that we can't have super PACs, okay, but what's to stop the ultra wealthy from just running and using their own money and dominating the airwaves? What's to stop Time Warner then from just saying, okay, nobody can buy commercials, we're going to run nonstop, positive coverage for these institutions? You're basically handing over all the power to the media organizations. And I think one of the reasons why Justice Democrats and the Young Turks are so heavily in favor of this is that most media is progressive, is left. So it's a huge detriment to conservatives. And conservatives combat this by using their resources and paying money to compete. So it's a big challenge. I think there's when you talk about money in politics, typically people think of something broader than just buying commercials. For me, I think it's this. For me, I think we need to stop is revolving door politics, like, you know, the chairman of some big private firm, that, like a cybersecurity firm, will then get a job as the head of cybersecurity. I understand there's an argument when you see someone who worked at a major pharmaceutical company or food processing company get a job with the FDA. One of the arguments is that they have the experience. But at the same time, there's also potential conflict of interest. So it's a big challenge. It is a big challenge. I lean more in favor of we need some kind of regulation on the massive spending in politics because it's getting out of control. I just don't know what the answers are. So we'll carry on here. We need new leaders, period. We got a primary, folks. Ocasio-Cortez's chief of staff, Saikat Chakrabarty, said on the call. Chakrabarty is the co-founder of Just Democrats, Politico reported. And he was the one who started brand new Congress. So they've been working together for a long time, and they're directly connected to the Young Turks. From the report, the group said they want Democratic members of Congress to be representative of all of their diverse communities and support liberal policies like Medicare for all. That's not a liberal policy. That's a far, well, I wouldn't even call it necessarily a far left policy, but liberal, like they keep changing the meaning of liberal. It's kind of annoying. Abolishing the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Department. Why? That's not liberal either. That's far left. Implementing a Green New Deal. Now that's social liberalism for sure. A New Deal program. Listen, I actually am not entirely opposed to, I would say I lean in favor of something like a Green New Deal. I don't know their specifics, so I don't want to say I would endorse what they're planning. But the idea of investing money into heavy renewable energy and even nuclear energy infrastructure, I think would be a really good idea. Now, unfortunately, the left opposes nuclear energy because they, like, you know, I made a video about left-wing science denialism. They deny, they're opposed to GMO, they're opposed to nuclear energy. Their opposition is not based in reality. They deny science. Anyway, we'll carry on. And rejecting corporate PAC donations. Yeah, I'm not super opposed to that either. On the campaign trail, Ocasio-Cortez talked about forming a corporate free caucus as a means to push for reform. That type of group, if it forms, could turn out to be the left's counterpart to the Freedom Caucus, which pushed Republican leadership to the right. The group has invited members to nominate candidates and districts to target in the next election cycle, prioritizing women and diversity. Let me just say this before moving on, talking about why they're wrong and why they're going to lose. First, or they may win, but I'll say this. Cortez only won by about 3,000 or 4,000 votes. In a district of 740,000, she won only 15,000 votes total. What they're doing is they're targeting core Democrat districts that are like D plus 30, which that means that they typically poll 30 points in favor of Democrats. What happens then is, even though Cortez has had gaffe after gaffe, people vote Democrat no matter what. All she had to do was win a primary. That's how she took the seat from Joe Crowley. It's entirely possible that in 2 years, Joe Crowley wins his seat back. But here's the really important part. I've talked about this story. Far left candidates did poorly in the Democratic primaries. All right, where's the official number is basically that out of 78 primaries, the progressive lost. Let me just do it. There we go. They say, candidates belonging to the moderate New Democrat coalition or endorsed by the party establishment won 71 of their 78 primaries. Jim Kessler of Third Way says that voters were looking for fresh faces, not necessarily for liberal ones. Listen, Cortez, her winning was strategic, and that's what they want to do. So they could upset Congress by going after moderates and forcing Democrats to vote for the far left or a Republican. However, we can look at this graph right here and we can see how since the 80s, the Republicans' core has shifted a tiny bit to the right, but typically coalesced around very common ideals. The left has been fractured and split extremely far, according to The Economist. What's going to happen, in my opinion, is that you're going to see when they do this strategy, and they start forcing Democrats to confront far left policies or moderate Republicans, they're going to make the obvious choice. If the left is here and the right is here, and Democrats are like, look, man, you know, I believe a government plays a role in these programs, and I think we should expand them. But then they go all the way over here, they're going to be like, I don't want to give my entire paycheck to the government. I'm going to vote for the Republican, even though I disagree with them. I think that's the potential, and I think this graph shows a good example of why Trump won. Now, over the past, we have seen some big flips, like Orange County went entirely blue, and a lot of people think that's because the youth vote got out, for the most part. But here we can see why I believe the far left strategy is wrong, but they found a weakness primaries. Okay? This chart right here shows a weakness for Democrats in swing districts. However, it shows an extreme opportunity in safe districts. Because if they can convince a bunch of, poor people in a certain district, we're going to give you free healthcare, we're going to do all these things for you, and they vote for them in the primary, they will upset the establishment. And then, when you have, that will pull everyone to the left. Because look, I'm sure a lot of Democrats will be like, no way, I'm going right. But a lot of Democrats will be like, oh my God, I have no choice but to vote for the socialist. Better than a Republican, and they will. So I think the strategy is, it's really smart. They found a weakness in Congress, and they're going to exploit it. They end by saying, a quote, "There's lots of blue districts in this country where communities want to support a new generation of diverse working class leaders who fight tirelessly for their voters and build a movement around big solutions to our country's biggest problems." And that's the Justice Democrats Executive Director, Alexandra Rojas. But I will say this. As much as it's great to see the incumbent, Joe Crowley, get stripped, because I'm not a big fan of the establishment, super rich Democrats, you need to realize electing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was damaging to your district, okay? She has no experience. She has had gaffe after gaffe. She really does not understand what she's doing. And you took the fourth most powerful Democrat who was in your district and stripped him from, removed him from Congress. You seriously, seriously hurt yourselves. It's true. Like, come on, man. Like, you got to be honest. Cortez has nowhere near the clout of Crowley. She doesn't have the experience. And for their district, that's bad news. However, just because, I always tell people, if you're addicted to a drug, you got to get off of it. And if Crowley is bad for the district, it doesn't, just because it's going to hurt in the short term, you got to make that long-term investment. I don't think Cortez is that long-term investment, because I don't think she knows what she's talking about. Her numbers are way off. She doesn't understand unemployment. She barely understands foreign policy, and thus you have put the youngest person who has no experience, who barely understands how the world functions in Congress, and she's going to change like that. She's already been criticized for drifting to the right, realizing how wrong she is. Anyway, I got one more video coming up in just a few minutes. This time, apparently there's a controversy over Scrabble because women don't win, even though there's no gender restriction. Stick around, that video will be up in a few minutes.